think anything prepared him for this moment. And he looks about as comfortable as a Benedictine monk in a strip club. I mean, he has this look of disbelief on his face as he says, look, I reported the facts. You can reach your own conclusions.
I also want to compare you to the last major special counsel investigation that we had. You agree Special Counsel Mueller charged dozens of individuals and you indicted 3. Is that correct?
Indicted 2 and a third pleaded guilty.
Right. And Special Counsel Mueller had dozens of convictions, some at trial, but no defendant was outright acquitted. Is that right in the Mueller investigation? Outright acquitted. Across the board, every charge acquitted.
Right. I don't believe there are any acquittals. I'm not sure there were dozens of convictions. There were dozens. More than a dozen people who were indicted.
You were a little bit more about the independence of a special counsel and just clarify, you did send multiple texts to the Attorney General after you were appointed as special counsel. Did you ever text message with Attorney General Garland once he took over as Attorney General?
No, Attorney General Garland had me communicate through the principal Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Weinsheimer.
Did you ever travel overseas with Attorney General Garland?
No.
And
I met with the Attorney General, but I didn't travel overseas with him.
And President Biden, through the Attorney General, could have had you removed, fired. Is that right?
I'm sure he could have.
And you stayed on.
I completed
the scope of what's in the report.
It's literally the scope of what your charging order is. Who put it in motion? We get after it was put in motion, the FBI did a bunch of wrong and corrupt things. Totally understand. We're trying to deal with that. But when you are part of the cover-up, Mr. Durham, then it makes our job harder.
Yeah, well, if that's your thought, I mean, there's no way of dissuading you from that. I can tell you that it's offensive and that the people who worked on this investigation have spent their lives trying to protect the people in this country and pursue within the law what it is that we are authorized to do.
You tried 2 cases, lost both of them, and then the one guilty plea you got, Kleinsmith is back to practicing law in Washington, D.C. today.
That's beyond my control.
Right, but the fact that you allowed that plea to occur, right, and then the punishment was insufficient, the fact that you didn't charge Andrew McCabe, you didn't convict the lying Democrats or the lying Russians, you didn't investigate Mifsud or the Mueller probe, even though, as we sit here today in black letter, that was your charge. Have you ever heard of the Washington Generals?
The Washington Generals, yes.
Yeah, and they're the team that basically gets paid to show up and lose, right?
Damn!
Well, I'm sure that the players who exert blood, sweat, and tears don't view it that way, but you might.
I think they do. I think they do because the job of the Washington Generals is to show up every night and to play the Harlem Globetrotters. And their job is to lose.
I'm sorry, I was thinking of a different thing.
Yeah, so their job is to lose. And I'm kind of wondering, and it just seems so facially obvious that it's not what's in your report that's telling, it's the omission, it's the lack of work you did. And for the people like the chairman who put trust in you, I think you let them down, I think you let the country down, and you are one of the barriers to the true accountability. If you weren't gonna do what Mr. Jordan said you were gonna do in that video and give us the basis for all of it, what's this all been about? Wait, why didn't you subpoena him to a grand jury?
I'm sorry, why not?
Why didn't you send him a grand jury subpoena?
Mr. Mifsud? You'd have to find Mr. Mifsud before you could serve a grand jury subpoena on him.
Well, you guys were out in Italy. Was it you and Bill Barr looking for authentic pasta over there, or Mifsud?
Let's go to invited Russian help. Mr. Durham, you're aware of Donald Trump's public statements along the lines of, hey, Russia, if you're listening, hack Hillary's emails, you'll be richly rewarded by the press. You aware of that?
I'm aware of that.
And are you aware that Mueller found that hours after he made that plea for Russian help, the Russians, in fact, tried to hack one of the email servers affiliated with the Clinton campaigner family?
If that happened, I'm not aware of that. I mean, it could very well.
You're not aware of that in the Mueller report? So when you say you're not aware of evidence of collusion in the Mueller report, it's because you apparently haven't read the Mueller report.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you read what's in the cable and what's in the report, is that what the diplomats reported was there was a suggestion of a suggestion that the Russians could help. They had damaging information as to Mrs. Clinton. And
by releasing it anonymously, right? And that's exactly what happened, isn't it?
I don't.
You really don't know?
I'm not sure exactly, when you say exactly what happened.
Well, the Russians
information
released stolen emails through cutouts, did they not?
There were emails.
It's
that
a
were
very simple
released
question. Did
by
they release
WikiLeaks.
information, stolen information through cutouts, yes or no?
Yeah, I'm not sure that.
You really don't know the answer to that? The answer is yes, they did. Through DC League
Well, in your mind, it's yes.
Well, Mueller's answer was yes. More important than mine, Mueller's answer was yes. Now, that information, of course, was helpful to the Trump campaign, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, but that the Russians intruded into,
Well, I just want to
hacked
get,
into the systems, they released information.
and that was helpful to the Trump campaign, right?
And the conclusion in the ICA and in the Mueller investigation was that the Russians intended to assist.
Can you answer my question, Mr. Durham? That was helpful to the Trump campaign, right?
Yeah, that's.
And Trump made use of that, as I said, didn't he, by touting those stolen documents on the campaign trail over 100 times?
I said, I don't really read the newspapers or listen to the news. I don't
Oh, really,
find all that reliable, so I don't know that.
Mr. Durham, were you totally oblivious to Donald Trump's use of the stolen emails on the campaign trail more than 100 times? Did
I'm
that
not aware of
escape your
that.
attention?
I am not aware of that.
Mr. Durham, did you seek communications pertaining to someone named Mr. Bernard from a federal district judge?
I'm not, assuming that prosecutors go to judges for certain kinds of orders, they are typically sealed proceedings. I'm not speaking.
Did you seek an order
direct to your
to
question, but I'm not going to comment on anything that I believe is under seal.
Did you seek a court order to obtain personal communications pertaining to Mr. Bernard?
I'm not going to speak beyond the report on that point, and I'm not going to violate any
Were you-
sealing orders.
I don't think it violates any sealing orders to tell us if you sought personal communications by court order. Did you?
Again, it's beyond the report.
Well, let's not even
Subject
make it
to sealing
specific to a
orders.
person. Did you seek court orders to obtain particular records, and were you denied by the judge?
I think the question is,
No,
intended
the
to
question is
suggest
what
that I don't
the
want to
question is what
disclose something I'm
The question is what I
uncomfortable
asked you, Mr. Durham. You get to give the answer, not the question. The question is, did you seek a court order to get records from a judge pertaining to private communications, and were you turned down by the judge for lack of a sufficient basis?
And I've told you
Yes
that
or no?
it's beyond the report. I don't think I'm authorized to talk about it, and I'm not going to violate
It's
any.
not beyond the
sealing orders.
report. It's not beyond the report.
Do you see anything in the report about that?
Yes. Did you seek an order, and were you turned down? And then did you seek to go around the court order by going to the grand jury?
No. You like to know what that was about?
What I would like to know, Mr. Durham, is did Mrs. Danahy, who resigned from your team, raise ethical concerns about your trying to go around the court order?
To my knowledge, no.
Then why did she leave?
I told you before, previously, that I have the highest regard for Ms. Danahy. Ms. Danahy and I are friends. Ms. Danahy, like everybody.
You know why she left, right?
I'm not
You
sure
do know the
why
answer
she
to the
left.
question. You know why she left, right?
Time of the gentleman has expired.
That Don Jr. was informed that a Russian official was offering the Trump campaign, quote, very high level and sensitive information, unquote, that would be incriminating if Hillary Clinton was part of, quote, Russia and its government support of Mr. Trump. Are you aware of that?
Sure, people get phone calls all the time from individuals who claim to have information like that.
Really, the son of a presidential candidate gets calls all the time from before in government offering dirt on their opponent? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think this is unique in your experience.
So you have other instances of the Russian government offering dirt on a presidential candidate to the presidential candidate's son. Is that what you're saying?
Would you repeat the question?
You said that it's not uncommon to get offers of help from a hostile foreign government in a presidential campaign directed at the president's son. You really stand by that, Mr. Durham?
I'm saying that people can make phone calls making claims all the time that you may have experienced.
Are you really trying to diminish the significance of what happened here and the secret meeting that the president's son set up in Trump Tower to receive that incriminating information? Are you trying to diminish the significance of that, Mr.
I'm
Durham?
not trying to diminish it at all, but I think the more complete story is that they met and it was a ruse and they didn't talk about Mrs. Clinton.
And you think it's insignificant that he had a secret meeting with a Russian delegation for the purpose of getting dirt on Hillary Clinton and the only disappointment expressed at that meeting was that the dirt they got wasn't better. You don't think that's significant?
I don't think that that was a well-advised thing to do.
Not well advised.
Right.
Well, that's the understatement of the year. So you think it's perfectly appropriate or maybe just ill-advised for a presidential campaign to secretly meet with a Russian delegation to get dirt on their opponent? You would merely say that's inadvisable?
Yeah, if you're asking me would I do it, I hope I wouldn't do it. But it was not illegal. It was stupid, foolish, ill-advised.
Well, it is illegal to conspire to get incriminating opposition research from a hostile government that is of financial value to a campaign. Wouldn't that violate campaign laws?
I don't know all those facts to be true.
Provides that you don't speak about a pending investigation, and yet you did, didn't you?
I'm not exactly sure what
when the Inspector General issued a report saying that the investigation was properly predicated, you spoke out in violation of Department of Justice policy to criticize the Inspector General's conclusions, didn't you?
I issued a public statement. I didn't do it anonymously. I didn't do it through third persons. But
nonetheless, you violated department policy by issuing a statement while your investigation was ongoing, didn't you?
I don't know that. If I did, then I did, but I was not aware that I was violating some policy.
And you also sought to get the Inspector General to change his conclusion, did you not? When he was concluding that the investigation was properly predicated, did you privately seek to intervene to change that conclusion?
This is outside the scope of the report, but if you want to go there, we asked the Inspector General to take a look at the intelligence that's included in the classified appendix that you looked at and said that that ought to affect portions of his report.
And you thought it was appropriate for you to intervene with an independent investigation by the Inspector General because he was reaching a conclusion you disagreed with. You thought that was appropriate.
That's not, the premise isn't right. The Inspector General circulated a draft memo to a number of agencies and persons. Our group was one of them. We were asked to review that draft and bring to his attention any concerns that we had or disagreements.
And when he refused to change his report, you violated
Mr. Chairman, I insist on regular order.
Well, it's not even his time. It's Ms. Lofgren's time, so the gentleman yields back.
I recall.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Durham.
Can I just complete that answer, Warren? But I don't want to lay any blame at their part. I made that decision to make a statement. They were not involved in it. Nora Danahy.
Gentlelady from Florida.
Right. Nora Danahy, a friend of mine, a very good lawyer, an honest person.
Why did she resign?
That's Nora Danahy. That's why we brought her on.
Why did she resign?
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman
Answer the question if you'd like.
Mr. Chairman, who's in charge here? Because it's
There are multiple parts of that.
Did it take 4 years to complete?
Correct.
Okay. And with all these resources and all these people you were sent to help you investigate the investigators, you only filed 3 criminal cases. You only brought 2 cases to trial, correct?
Correct.
And you lost all the cases you brought to trial, correct?
Correct.
In fact, 2 juries acquitted your defendants on all charges. And the one conviction that you obtained, the defendant pleaded guilty to a single count and never went to trial, correct?
Correct.
I will note that in that case, the primary investigative steps were all completed by Inspector General Horowitz. Perhaps you were better when it came to your report. From my reading, your report did not make any specific concrete recommendations to improve DOJ or FBI policies or procedures. In fact, your report repeatedly references the recommendations made by Inspector General Horowitz, almost all of which DOJ and FBI have already implemented. Again, your investigation lasted 4 years. 4 years and untold sums of money, and you still obtained only 1 conviction. You did produce a 300-page report, though, and that's given my Republican counterparts plenty of material to
And the other 2 men you prosecuted went to trial on the charges, they were accused of lying to the FBI, and both were slam dunk acquitted. Isn't that correct?
They were acquitted.
And none of the individuals you prosecuted were ever charged with being part of a hoax or a fraud or a witch hunt or a politically motivated deep state conspiracy against Donald Trump. Isn't that correct?
I would not say that that's accurate.
You mean you did charge somebody with being a part of a hoax?
We charged Mr. Sussman with having knowingly provided false information to the FBI regarding Alpha Bank.
But he
and lying.
he was acquitted, though, right? After
Well, that wasn't your question.
Mr. Sussman was acquitted after you charged him, correct?
Grand jury found
He was found innocent by a jury of, by a unanimous jury of 12.
That's not true.
Well,
What's true is the grand jury found probable cause to indict Mr. Sussman.
A jury of his
trial
peers acquitted him, though, correct?
And a trial jury.
You're not going to disagree on that, are you, Mr. Durham?
I'm going to try to answer your question as it was asked.
Well, let me ask you this, because
Jordan was pathetic. Can Jordan, as head of Judiciary, continue, knowing that we didn't get the answers and you laid out, and I'd like you to tell us who should be called before the committee. The Intel Committee is a disaster because they're not going after anything. They're not going after Sequoia. They've suppressed that. You've got Jim Jordan. Let's be blunt. The Judiciary, if you didn't have Matt Gaetz yesterday and a couple of others, nothing. They were making him St. Durham, and it's a disaster.
I'd like to ask you the following simple yes or no questions. Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was convicted, correct?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that one?
Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was convicted, correct?
That's correct. Not
Trump's
in connection
former
with
foreign
these
policy
matters.
advisor to the campaign, George Papadopoulos, was convicted, correct?
That's correct.
Trump's former deputy campaign manager, Rick Gates, was convicted, correct?
Not in connection with the Russian matter.
All right. Mr. Durham, you can hold yourself out as an objective Department of Justice official or as a partisan hack, and the more that you try to spin the facts and not answer my questions, you sound like the latter. So I'm just going to ask this simply. Trump's former National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, was convicted, correct?
That's correct.
Trump's longtime advisor, Roger Stone, was convicted, correct?
I'm sorry, missed the last thing you
Trump's
mentioned.
longtime advisor, Roger Stone, was convicted, correct?
Correct.
In contrast to multiple Trump associates who were convicted, you brought 2 cases to jury trial based on this investigation, and you lost both. And so I don't actually know what we're doing here, because the author of the Durham report concedes that the FBI had enough information to investigate. And thank goodness the FBI did, because multiple Trump associates who committed crimes were held accountable. And the best way to summarize what happened is thank you to the brave men and women of the FBI.
Thank you.